Two security guards refused entry to a casually dressed man, unaware it was Elon Musk. His response left the world stunned. The Grand Tech Innovation Summit was one of the biggest events of the year. It brought together top business leaders, famous inventors, and tech geniuses from around the world. Expensive cars dropped off guests in sharp suits and elegant dresses. Photographers snapped pictures, and a few whispered about the powerful people arriving. Two security officers in black uniforms guarded the entrance to the venue. They let in important people and turned away anyone who didn't belong. Then, he appeared. A man wearing a hoodie walked toward the entrance in a relaxed, steady stride, his hands tucked in his pockets. Unlike the others, no assistant, bodyguards, or press followed him. To the other people who attended the event, this man didn't exist. At first, no one paid attention. As he reached the entrance, one of the security guards stepped forward and blocked his way. "Excuse me, sir. This is a private event. Invitation only." The man stopped and looked at the guard. His face was calm, almost amused. "I think I'm on the list," he said. The guard raised an eyebrow. "Name?" he demanded a bit roughly. The man pulled back his hood slightly and spoke just two words. "Elon Musk." The guard let out a small laugh. "Right, and I'm the president." His partner chuckled too. "Nice try, buddy. Elon Musk wouldn't just walk in alone wearing a hoodie." He checked Elon again, then with a frown on his face, he said, "You're going to have to leave." A few people in the crowd overheard the conversation. Some started whispering. A young woman in a business suit frowned, looking back and forth between the man and her phone screen. He did look like Elon Musk, didn't he? She thought. A man with glasses, a tech blogger, brought out his phone and began to record. Could it really be him? He thought to himself. It doesn't matter, he assured himself as he continued to record, thinking of the views his YouTube channel would get. Nearby, a woman in her 60s named Evelyn, elegantly dressed in a navy blue coat with pearl buttons with her silver hair, neatly pinned up, looked closely at the man's face and recognized him. Elon Musk didn't move as the security guard ordered. He didn't argue. He didn't try to prove who he was. He just stood there, waiting, calm, silent with amusement dancing on his face. The security guards noticed the growing whispers and the way people were staring. Then finally, a voice cut through the crowd. "Do you even know who you're talking to?" Evelyn stepped forward, shaking her head at the guards. Her voice was steady. Still, Elon Musk didn't say anything. His eyes moved from the guards to the murmuring crowd, then to the growing number of phone cameras pointed in his direction. The taller security guard, the one who had first stopped him, squared his shoulders. His tone turned sharper, more dismissive. "Sir, I already told you. This is an exclusive event. No invitation, no entry. Now please step aside." His partner, a younger man with an eager expression, smirked slightly. "People will do anything for attention these days," he muttered, but loud enough to reach Elon's ears. A ripple of discomfort passed through the crowd. A few onlookers frowned. Some exchanged glances, uneasy with the way the guards were treating him. Evelyn stepped up again, and her presence alone commanded respect. She wasn't loud. She didn't push her way in. But when she spoke, people listened. "Shame on you," she said firmly, her voice carrying over the low murmurs. The taller guard blinked, caught off guard. "Excuse me," he said. The silver-haired woman turned to Elon. "Why won't you tell them who you are?" she asked. Elon shrugged. He didn't think he needed to prove himself to anyone. Evelyn faced the guards again, eyes narrowing slightly. "You don't judge a man by his clothes. You don't belittle someone because you think they don't belong." The younger guard hesitated, but the older scoffed, interrupting her. "With all due respect, ma'am, we have rules. You can't just believe every person who claims to be a billionaire. Next thing you know, someone will walk in saying they're the King of England." A few chuckles scattered through the crowd. A few people found the incident amusing. The silver-haired woman's eyes sharpened. "Do you hear yourselves?" she asked. "You assume he's lying because of what? His hoodie? His sneakers? Or is it because you think power and success must always wear a suit? A man in a sharp gray blazer standing off to the side cleared his throat. She's right, he said. You didn't even check the list. What if you're wrong? You know, this isn't a great look, especially at a gathering like this, she said. As the exchange continued, the tech blogger uploaded the video on the internet with the caption, "Some guy pretending to be Elon Musk just got caught trying to sneak into the summit. Security handled it like pros." And just like that, the internet exploded, and slowly, the venue began to heat up too. The murmur in the crowd grew louder. Some people were starting to recognize him. Others weren't so sure. The question in their head was, why would Elon show up to a high-profile event dressed ordinary? A few attendees shifted uncomfortably, glancing between the guards and the man in the hoodie. Are they seriously turning someone away just because of how he looks? A woman near the back muttered. The guards weren't budging. The older guard exhaled sharply, his patience thinning. His grip tightened on the radio at his hip, his stance shifting from dismissive to defensive. Enough of this. If you don't have proper credentials, you're not getting in. He stood his ground. His partner, the younger guard, leaned in and smirked at Elon. Or maybe you'd like us to forcibly remove you, Mr. Musk, he mocked, his voice dripping with sarcasm. The older security guard let out an impatient sigh, crossing his arms. I don't know who you think you are, but this is the last time I'm going to ask. Please leave the entrance. Or, call your assistant or driver or whoever usually handles your invites. The younger guard added, a slice of sarcasm in his tone. Some attendees started shifting uncomfortably. They knew this had gone too far. A woman near the entrance murmured, "This is embarrassing." The older one squared his shoulders, his voice colder now. "Sir, this is your last warning. Step away from the entrance, or we'll have to remove you." Then he moved closer to Elon as if to touch him. And for the first time, Elon's expression changed. His face darkened with anger, and the weight of that look was enough to stop the guard from touching him. "Check the list," Elon calmly said. The younger guard shifted uneasily, his grip tightening around his radio. A flicker of hesitation flashed across his face, his rigid stance faltering. For the first time, doubt crept into his eyes, like a man realizing too late that he may have made a mistake. Yet he remained silent, as if waiting for someone else to confirm what his gut was already telling him. Evelyn stepped forward. Her voice sounded remarkably calm, yet firm. "Tell me, young man, is this how you greet all your guests?" The older guard scoffed. "Look, ma'am, I don't make the rules." She didn't flinch. "No, you just judge people before you know the truth," she supplied. The guards remained unmoved, standing their ground. The older, arrogant one let out a short, dismissive scoff, shaking his head. He crossed his arms and tilted his chin up, looking at Musk skeptically. "If you're really Elon Musk," he says, voice dripping with doubt, "prove it." The younger guard, who had stood firm until now, shifts uneasily. Something felt off. He noticed the way people brought their phones out and chatted excitedly. Maybe we should double-check," he asked. The older guard turned sharply toward him. "What?" He wanted to argue, but just as he was about to open his mouth, he heard heels clicking furiously. A woman wearing a tag with assistant supervisor written on it rushed to the entrance from inside the venue. Her eyes darted between Musk and the guards as her hands fumbled for her radio. "Sir," she breathed into it, her voice urgent. "We have a problem." The older guard saw her reaction as she took in the scene before them. He knew something terrible was up, but remained in denial. He chuckled, shaky, and rolled his eyes. "Please, what's next? A news crew?" he joked, trying to calm the tension that had unfolded before them. As if on cue, a van pulls up at the curb. Reporters spill out. Cameras click. Microphones are raised. Musk remains composed, his expression neutral. He didn't gloat, but simply waited. The arrogant guard swallowed hard. His confidence, just seconds ago unshakable, began to crack. The moment the reporters descended, the energy at the entrance shifted entirely. Bright camera flashes cut through the dimming evening light. Microphones are shoved forward, and questions fly rapidly. Is it true security refused entry to Elon Musk? Sir, how does it feel to be mistaken for an imposter? Mr. Musk, do you have a statement on this? One of the reporters asked. The guards stiffened. That's actually him, you fools. How do you not recognize one of the most famous men on the planet? This is embarrassing. Fire those guards! Some of the guests screamed. His throat felt dry suddenly. He nudged his senior with his elbow, voice barely above a whisper. I think we've made a terrible mistake. The older guard swallowed hard. His once confident stance wavered. The cameras were now pointed at him, catching every micro-expression, the clench of his jaw, the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. He turned slightly as if seeking an escape, but there was none. A reporter leaned in. Sir, why did you claim this man isn't Elon Musk? The silence stretched unbearably long. The weight of the moment pressed down. Musk, standing at the center of it all, remained composed. He hadn't uttered a single word in self-defense. And yet, the world was already speaking for him. The older guard cleared his throat. Sweat beads formed at his temple. He forced a laugh, hollow and nervous. Well, just doing our job. A murmur of disbelief rippled through the crowd. The excuse was weak, and everyone knew it. On one side of the commotion, the event organizer rushed outside, breathless. The assistant supervisor hurriedly explained the situation to him, gesturing toward the guards and Musk. Color drained from the faces of the security guards. The older one glanced between Musk and the cameras. His eyes settled on Musk as if he wanted Musk to save him. His partner, the younger guard, now looked nervous, gripping his phone like a lifeline as he watched the video's numbers climb. Right on cue, the next question from a reporter landed like a trap, tightening around the guards before they even realized it. Tell us, gentlemen, how does it feel to deny entry to one of the most influential men in the world? The cameras swung toward them, and microphones were pushed forward. The older guard, who had been so sure of himself moments ago, suddenly looked like a man caught in a storm with no shelter. His mouth opened, and then closed. There was no quick retort this time. The younger guard shifted uncomfortably. His eyes darted between the flashing cameras and the murmuring crowd. Before the tension could snap, a calm voice cuts through the chaos. Elon Musk stepped forward. Let's not make this harder than it needs to be, he said, his tone measured and almost reassuring. These men were doing their jobs. Security isn't easy. Mistakes happen. The crowd quieted, the shift in tone unexpected. The reporters hesitated, thrown off course. Instead of humiliation, Musk offered understanding. Instead of blame, he extended grace. The guards exchanged glances. The older one swallowed hard, his stance faltering. The younger one looked clearly overwhelmed. Then, finally, Elon continued. We could actually use people like this at SpaceX, Elon said. People who stand by the rules, even if they need a little improvement. The reporters, now fully engaged, turned their attention to the guards. Did you really not recognize Elon Musk? What was going through your mind when you refused him entry? Do you regret your decision? They asked. The younger guard's face flushed a bright red. He looked very embarrassed. The older one, the arrogant guard from earlier, straightened his posture, trying to maintain his composure. But the weight of the moment was undeniable. Before they could answer, Musk stepped forward for them, his presence commanding yet calm. He raises a hand, not in reprimand, but in reassurance. They don't need to explain anything, he says, his voice even. Let's be honest. If someone showed up to an event claiming to be me, dressed like this, he gestured at his hoodie and jeans, a small chuckle escaping. You'd be skeptical too. The tension in the air softened. A few people in the crowd laughed, nodding in agreement, and even some of the reporters smiled. These guys were doing their job, Musk continued, and I respect that. Security isn't easy, as I mentioned earlier. It requires making judgment calls in the moment. And while they may have miscalculated this time, It wasn't out of malice. The guards exhaled, relief washing over their faces. The real takeaway here isn't about them messing up, Musk added, looking straight at the cameras now. It's about how quickly we shame people for human errors. The murmurs in the crowd changed in tone. Instead of embarrassment, the guards were met with understanding, and instead of judgment, there was reflection. And just like that, Elon Musk took control of the narrative, not as a billionaire seeking validation, but as a leader who understands that even mistakes can be stepping stones. For a moment, there was silence. The energy that once crackled with tension now hung in quiet disbelief. The cameras were still rolling, though, and the reporters still held onto their mics, but no one rushed to speak. The younger guard watched sharply, his eyes on Musk and the stunned faces around him, and swallowed hard. The older one, once so sure of himself, shifts awkwardly, rubbing his wrist as if trying to ground himself. It was supposed to be a simple job, a routine task. But now, he was standing at the center of a story much larger than he ever imagined. Then, Evelyn, who had defended Musk from the beginning, stepped forward. Her voice was steady and warm. "Kindness is a currency more valuable than gold, young man," she says softly, looking at the older guard. "You mistook a man for something less than he was today, but he chose to see more in you." The older guard hesitated. His jaw tightened, then loosened. He wanted to apologize, but instead, he slowly nodded. Musk watched the short exchange and finally extended his hand toward the man. The moment lingered, almost too long before the guard finally took it, gripping it tighter than expected. A silent apology. A silent acceptance. The young man who had whispered in the crowd earlier grins as he nudges his friend. "I told you it was him," he murmured, shaking his head in wonder. A few feet away, a reporter finally finds her voice, but this time there's no edge to it, no hunger for a scandal. Instead, she simply asked, "Mr. Musk, why did you do that?" Musk looked around at the cameras, at the faces, at the guards who were still processing what just happened. And then he replied simply, "Mistakes don't define people. What they do afterwards does." A murmur spread through the crowd. Cameras flash. The reporters scrambled to capture the moment. But beyond the spectacle, something more profound lingered. It wasn't just about a billionaire being turned away at the door. It's about grace in the face of misjudgment, about leadership that doesn't belittle but lifts,